The warmth of the morning sun streamed through the kitchen window as she set down 2 cups of tea, the familiar aroma filling the air. Her son sat across from her, absently stirring his cup, his gaze distant. She noticed the way his fingers tapped restlessly against the table, the hesitation in his voice when he finally spoke. "Mom, can I ask you something?" She smiled, setting her own cup aside. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" He hesitated, shifting in his seat. "It's just, I don't know how to do this. I feel like everyone else understands something I don't." She studied his face, recognizing the vulnerability in his eyes. He had always been thoughtful, careful with his words, but she sensed this was different. It wasn't just uncertainty. It was the fear of stepping into something unfamiliar, something that mattered. "You don't have to rush," she assured him gently. "Just tell me what's bothering you." A sigh escaped him. "There's someone I really like, but I don't know what to say, or if I should say anything at all. What if I mess up? What if I ruin everything before it even starts?" Her heart swelled with understanding. It was a familiar worry, one she had felt herself once. Love, in its earliest stages, was full of uncertainty, fragile yet exhilarating. She reached for his hand, giving it a comforting squeeze. Love isn't about getting everything right the first time. It's about being honest, being yourself. You don't have to have all the answers, and neither does she. His shoulders relaxed slightly, but doubt still clouded his expression. "But what if I say something wrong?" She chuckled softly. "Then you learn. You grow. Love isn't about perfection. It's about connection. If she's the right person, she'll see you for who you are, not for the words you might fumble." A small smile flickered across his lips, but the uncertainty lingered. "How did you know what to do when you first fell in love?" She leaned back, reminiscing for a moment. "I didn't. I was nervous, just like you. But I learned that the best moments come when you stop overthinking and just let yourself feel. A kind gesture, a genuine word. Those matter more than rehearsed speeches." He exhaled, as if letting go of some invisible weight. "So, I don't have to have everything figured out." She shook her head. "No one does. But if you lead with sincerity, you'll never go wrong." A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that only existed between two souls who understood each other. He wasn't just asking for advice. He was asking for reassurance, for the quiet certainty that he wasn't alone in this. And as she watched him sit up a little straighter, a newfound determination in his eyes, she knew. She could tell he was still lost in thought, the weight of uncertainty pressing on him. His fingers traced the rim of his cup, his brows knitted together. He had always been thoughtful, always careful with his words, but this was different. He wasn't just overthinking, he was afraid of making a mistake. She reached for his hand again, her grip warm and steady. "Tell me about her." His face softened, a flicker of something unspoken crossing his expression. "She's different," he admitted, his voice quieter now. "She's kind, funny in a way that makes you forget about everything else. When she talks, it's like she really listens. Not just to respond, but to understand." His mother smiled knowingly. "That's special. And how do you feel when you're around her?" A pause. He searched for the right words, then let out a breath. "Like I don't want to be anywhere else." She squeezed his hand gently. "Then that's all that matters." He looked at her, still unsure. "But what if she doesn't feel the same?" "Then you respect that," she said simply. "Love isn't about forcing something. It's about offering something real without expecting anything in return. If it's meant to be, it will be." His jaw tightened, frustration creeping in. "But what if I say the wrong thing? Or if I freeze up? I don't want to embarrass myself." She chuckled, shaking her head. "You will say the wrong thing at some point. You might trip over your words. You might second-guess yourself. But that's part of it. Love isn't about perfection. Remember? It's about showing up, being there, letting yourself be seen." He let her words sink in, but the fear was still there, lurking beneath the surface. She could see it, the fear of vulnerability, of stepping into the unknown. "Let me tell you something," she said, her voice softer now. "When I was young, I thought love was about grand gestures. The right words, the perfect timing. But real love, it's in the little things. It's in the way someone remembers your favorite song, the way they look at you when you're not watching, the way they make you feel safe. Even in silence, His expression shifted, something settling inside him. He nodded slowly, running a hand through his hair. So, what do I do? You be yourself, she answered. You tell her how you feel, in your own way. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's a small gesture. But whatever you do, do it with sincerity. He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing just a little. Okay, he murmured. Okay. She could see it now, that tiny spark of courage taking root. He wasn't fearless yet, but he was trying. And sometimes that was enough. The door creaked open softly, and he stepped inside, his expression a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. She looked up from where she sat, setting her book aside as he dropped into the chair across from her. There was something different about him now, something lighter. Well, she asked, a knowing smile playing on her lips. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. I did it. She raised an eyebrow. And a pause. He searched for the right words, but they didn't come easily. Instead, he just let out a small, breathy laugh. It wasn't perfect. I stumbled over my words. My hands wouldn't stay still. I think I even forgot to breathe for a second. He shook his head, still in disbelief. But she smiled. She listened, and she told me she was glad I told her. Her heart swelled with quiet pride. That's wonderful. He looked down at his hands, a slow smile creeping onto his face. It felt real. I wasn't trying to impress her. I wasn't pretending to be someone I'm not. I just told her the truth. And how you feel now? She asked gently. He let out a deep breath, his shoulders finally relaxing. Relieved, proud, and still a little terrified. He laughed, shaking his head. But mostly, I just feel good. She nodded, her smile widening. That's because you were honest. That's all love really asks of us. To show up as we are. He leaned back, his gaze thoughtful. I used to think love was about getting everything right, about knowing exactly what to say, how to act. But now, I see it's just being there, being present, letting someone see you, even when you're scared. She reached across the table, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. You understand more than you think. He squeezed back, the warmth of her touch grounding him. I wouldn't have done it without you. She smiled, her eyes soft with affection. You would have. You just needed a little push. Silence settled between them. Comfortable and full. He had taken his first step into something new, something uncertain, but he had done it with an open heart, and that was enough. He stood, stretching. I think I need some sleep. She chuckled. Go rest, sweetheart. Tomorrow is a new day. As he walked toward his room, he paused, glancing back. Mom. Yes. Thank you. Her heart warmed. Always. And with that, It had been a few days since their conversation, but she could still see the change in him. There was a quiet confidence in the way he carried himself now. Subtle, but unmistakable. He no longer seemed weighed down by doubt, no longer lost in hesitation. Growth was never loud or sudden. It was in the small, steady steps forward. He sat beside her again, this time without the restless tapping of his fingers, without the heavy sighs of uncertainty. There was something lighter in his presence, something that told her he had crossed an invisible threshold within himself. I've been thinking, he said, his voice steady, about everything you told me. She waited, knowing he wasn't looking for immediate reassurance anymore, just a space to sort through his thoughts. I get it now, he continued. Love isn't something you prepare for like an exam. It's not about having all the right words or knowing exactly what to do. He exhaled, shaking his head with a small chuckle. It's about showing up even when you're scared, even when you don't know what's going to happen next. A smile touched her lips. That's a lesson some people take a lifetime to learn. He met her gaze, his expression softer now. I guess I just needed someone to remind me that I don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. Her chest tightened at his words, the depth of them settling into the quiet space between them. She had spent years teaching him how to be kind, how to be strong, how to face the world with courage. But this was something he had to discover for himself. You never did, she said simply. A silence stretched between them, but it wasn't the kind that begged to be filled. It was full of understanding, of everything that didn't need to be said. After a moment, he leaned back, a slow smile playing on his lips. So, what do I do now? She laughed softly. You keep going. You keep learning. You keep letting love in. Even when it's uncertain, even when it scares you. He nodded, as if letting the words settle into something permanent. I think I can do that. And she knew he could, because love wasn't about being fearless. It was about being brave enough to try.